leadership is about how do you help yourself first, just simply get into this state of perpetual progression. And then how do you help lift others into that state? And whether you're talking about a business or you're talking about some personal situation, it's all about advancement. There's going to be good times and bad times. There's going to be moments when you're crushing it and moments when you just suck, right? But through that all, if you keep this positive energy, this progression mode, man, the force around you can just, it's palpable. And I believe that that's what's missing in the world is too many of us actually don't believe we have what it takes, or we have the right circumstances, or we have the right calling or title to actually make a difference. That's what I think needs to change. That's what I'm passionate about. That's why I wrote Leadership Orbit. That's what Leadership Orbit really is all about. And it works at the lowest levels of society to the very top. It's the same. And that's what so I just overcoming this leadership lie, I think is one of the most important things that we all can be spending our time on.
Welcome to the Perpetual Growth Podcast with Zach Palmer, the show where we explore the strategies, insights, and stories that empower you to grow your business, strengthen your relationships, and elevate your health. Because growth isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become along the way. Now, today I'm thrilled to welcome Matthew Mathison. Matthew is the founder and managing partner at MBL Partners, a platform for helping organizations and leaders thrive. As a longtime entrepreneur, operator, and investor, Matthew is fueled by an unwavering commitment to problem solving, conquering challenges, and empowering the next generation of leaders. So let's dive in and take another step on your journey to perpetual growth. Matthew, welcome. I'm very excited to have you here today, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Well, as my listeners know, I always like to start by turning over the microphone and just having you share a little bit about your story history. You know, where did you start in business? What were some of the major challenges, turning points, milestones, opportunities, successes, were the things that brought you to where you are today and have afforded you the life and lifestyle that you're now experiencing? I'd love to just turn it over.
Yeah, thanks so much. And again, I'm really excited to be on your show. I love the concept of your show, Perpetual Growth. This idea that this constant progressing, ever moving, changing, ideal. It's something that I believe in deeply. I started my career. I cut my teeth on Wall Street. I was in San Francisco during the dot-com bubble, heydays. By the way, now we actually have to refer to it as the OG dot-com bubble. I think there's a new version, an AI, tech bubble that's brewing, but the OG one was in the late 90s. I was in San Francisco working at Goldman Sachs. I was on the institutional trading desk. Because I was there at that time, I obviously was very focused on technology, although I was a generalist. And man, I always knew that I was an entrepreneur and like to start things, build things, grow things. From my earliest days, I was excited by doing that. But, being on Wall Street, especially at that time, man, it was like the heydays of like taking an idea and like making, dreams out of it. Now it all came crashing down as the dot-com bubble burst. But that's where I started my career. I ended up leaving Goldman after about 4 years, and I started my own research and trading firm called MBL Partners. Same thing. We were looking for hidden gems, diamonds in the rough. We did kind of grassroots, kicking the tires type of research to uncover that. That led to a bunch of different opportunities, including eventually launching and running my own long-short equity hedge fund. I was in New York at the time. And I did that for a while and just loved it. I was always entrepreneurial though. Even while I was investing publicly in kind of bigger companies and kind of doing those things, left Wall Street and went to the private side about a little more than 10 years ago, about 12 years ago. And again, continued to be an investor, an operator, an owner, and a builder, and have done a number of things, which ultimately led to the creation of MBL Partners about a year and a half ago. My partner and I launched this really with the core excitement around, similar to your show's theme, but we just believe that finding yourself in this kind of perpetual kind of orbiting, always growing, always progressing. We really kind of think that that's really what life is about. That's really thriving, as opposed to, the traditional definitions of thriving. Oh, you're in a corner office. Oh, you have a CEO title. Oh, you sold your business for X millions or hundreds of millions. Like those definitions are very fleeting. And so we actually think thriving is something that's much, much better, much more long lasting. And we set up a whole platform to invest behind it to help individuals and businesses thrive in that way and in that definition. And so that led me to here. I ended up writing a book called Leadership Orbit to discuss and describe more about that orbiting concept, kind of that sustainable, always advancing concept. And it's just something I'm super passionate about.
Oh, that's exciting. Thank you for sharing your history. There's a lot of lot to be extracted from that. Now, I find it pretty interesting. I mean, that's a fairly, at least in my mind, a polarizing journey, going from Wall Street to leadership development. And what I'm curious to explore a little bit deeper is one of the major turning points. The moment when you decided to go into the private sector. What was, I have to imagine that there was an underlying driving force, be it conscious or unconscious, a moment where you decided, like, enough is enough. I'm tired of this world. It's time to get to where my people are. Did something come to mind? Like what comes to mind for you?
So there's actually two things. One is, I think, more understandable. And then the other one is probably just more personal to me. So on the more understandable side of things, I started my career, my entire job function was to help the biggest investors in the world invest in companies that obviously would help them make money. And so I felt like I had to understand businesses, understand catalysts for those businesses, understand trends, and then be able to describe that to these individuals that were running these massive mutual funds and hedge funds and institutional capital. And it just the natural evolution of that. If you're any good at advising investors on how to invest, you're always going to get to a point where you're like, wait, why am I spending my time advising people how to invest? Why don't I just start investing my own capital, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's small.
Yeah.
And so that evolution kind of went from kind of the sell side to the buy side, which is very natural. And then if you become pretty good at investing in companies, some people, that's it, that they can just continue to invest in companies and that is their end all be all. For me, that actually, I had this underlying, I said this entrepreneurial itch. Being an investor is very entrepreneurial, kind of. To me, if you have that like innate entrepreneurial like gene in you, you actually want to build something. You don't just want to give money to someone else to build. You actually want to be in the one, building and growing. And so so professionally, from advising to actually being the investor to then ultimately saying, look, I want to actually see if I can build organizations and operate businesses, not just invest in them. That was the professional, I think, understandable progression along the way. On the flip side, personally, look, I find it just personally to me, what's very important, where I have found meaning, lasting meaning in my life, has been less about business outcomes, financial wins and losses. It's been more about the people impact around me. And I just think that it's really hard to garner that from just the investor seat. I think you've got to actually be in the trenches. You've got to be in the builder seat, in the operator seat, to really like help advance individuals' own leadership journeys. And that, I think, was just a personal tick that just keeps ticking. And that's why ultimately MBL Partners is so centered on really, yes, we invest. Yes, we advise. Yes, we do all those things. But at the end of the day, it's really what drives us is really, can we help people of all shapes and sizes, of all educational backgrounds, many of them no educational backgrounds, can we actually help them thrive and find meaning and success and progress in the business sense? And that's just something personally that I like.
I love that. It's fascinating. I'm glad that you just mentioned that about education too, because I'm one of those people. I don't have a conventional college education. I went about a year and a half and then took over business at 19. Yet I consider myself an extremely well-educated person. I read about a book a week. I'm more studious now than I ever was in conventional school. Go to countless different seminars and live events, immerse myself in the processes, digest and synthesize information like that. I mean, I love to learn. And I think for so long, we're conditioned to believe that you have to have a piece of paper behind your name in order to accomplish something of any magnitude or greatness, when in reality, a lot of very, very successful people don't. Of course, it all depends on what you want to do. If you want to be a neurosurgeon, I really want him to go to a great school, or her.
Right.
But, on the other hand, when it comes to business, there are a lot of ways to learn. And I find that one of the best is model the best and ignore the rest. Go find the people that have done the thing well, that'll teach you to skip over the pain points and lean more into what's going to help you to create the business and ultimate aspirations that you want faster. And it's just pay for speed, right? I'm curious too, though. It's interesting because you're another one of these people who are not very common, and I mean this in a complimentary way. In that, being an investor on Wall Street and all this analysts, I mean, that's very highly analytical thinking. And then the leadership side is the other half of the brain, which is very, very different. So, I mean, you're one of these, again, rare people that has created this convergence between a left brain, right brain dominance and skill set, and somehow found a merger. I mean, is that something that has come organically to you? I mean, to really be able to embody the highly analytical and tap into the emotional, the resonance, the creative is a pretty unique skill set. Is that something that you've always had? Did mentors help foster that? Where does that come from for you?
So it's a really interesting thing to think about yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, I have always found good success in terms of intellectual things, right?
Mhm.
Schooling, grading, advanced, studies. It's something that I would say I've been naturally blessed with, kind of an above average sense of those things. However, I have always found my edge to really be about this energy, this hustle energy. And it's probably because my dad was always yelling on the sidelines of my games, hustle, hustle, hustle. And afterwards, we would always talk about like the effort or the hustle factor more than about the skill or, whatever factor in sports. And so it
Mhm.
always just it always made sense to me that if I was going to get ahead, if I was going to find success in whatever avenue that I was going in, it was actually going to come down to how much I hustled.
Mhm.
And I think in this world where I believe the merging, as you described it, of analytics with kind of energy and, those types of things, I actually think that that's going to be more pronounced, not less pronounced, obviously with the onset of, to your point, education now no longer is there's no more a monopoly of education with Ivy League schools and big degrees, because as you know, we're a snap of a finger and a click of a button with any sort of AI agent, internet, searching, whatever. We can get access to the most advanced studies, educational information, and quite honestly, we can have the machines do all the things for us, such that what's going to be our pronounced edge? It's really going to be our organic hustle factor.
Mhm.
And that's just something that I grew up kind of believing and witnessing within my own, again, whether it was baseball or football or on the basketball court, where I was good. I
Mhm.
wasn't great. I was good, but the hustle factor could set me apart. And I knew
Mhm.
that clicked for me. And I carry that into the business world. And by the way, you said it, like, I've found some of the best operators and best performers in my businesses have not had any special fancy degree.
Mhm.
But you know what? They've been killers,
Mhm.
and super smart. And they had that hustle factor, that edge. And I
Mhm.
love finding those individuals and helping them. And quite honestly, I think many of our society's greatest problems can be solved with actually unleashing more of those types of people's belief that they can make a difference than through any other means. And that's what I'm passionate about.
I love that you said that belief. I mean, there's a few things. One, this is backwards right now, but humble hustle. So I'm very much of that hustle mentality, which even that is, there's a dichotomy too. Cause I went, took over a business when I was 19 years old. It was Mach 10, hair on fire for 20 years. And I think the hustle integrity never shifts, but where the energy goes does shift. And for me, the realization that I've had was when you accumulate, 2+ decades of knowledge and wisdom, one, you learn that you can accomplish more with less output and earn more potentially without having to be as confined to a business as we might be conventionally. And I think another huge value point with it is we now create the opportunity and freedom of choice. It's like I'm at a stage where I choose my clients. I'm spending more time with my kids and my family than ever before, which was hard because I fought that innate desire to push more, build more, grow more, do more over and over and over until I finally surrendered to the idea that I'm not giving up on something. I'm just temporarily shifting that energy, and I'm okay with it because it's the stage of life. It's what I want and what I need. There's many other actually really insightful things that you said. What I'm curious about, so one, I have to say this to you, Mark Twain, that's one of my favorite quotes. I never let my schooling get in the way of my education. Never let my schooling get in the way of my education. Obviously, I live by that quote. For you, the evolution that you're seeing in leadership, you mentioned is there's a greater depth and breadth of awareness. Now we're seeing not so much of this heavy focus on being the absolute best at owning left brain tendencies or the right brain artist, but now more of a convergence, more of a holistic utilization of the brain, which is probably a lot healthier for us overall. I mean, I'm absolutely certain it is. As it pertains to business and your leadership tenets and program and some of the philosophies that you've developed, what is it about leadership? Because it's such a broad term today, that you see as the greatest need or opportunity? Because I love discussing leadership. I love working with teams, particularly the C-suite, and really helping people to gain a greater depth and then breadth and understanding of awareness of how they're really showing up. I think ultimately that's where it starts, is becoming aware of how you're showing up. Where are you seeing the greatest need and opportunities for transformation?
So first off, I believe that we've been told a lie, right? I think many of us have been told this leadership lie that somehow to be a leader, you have to be part of the C-suite, or you have to have the corner office, or you have to be some, elected political figurehead. And the reality is the world is in short supply of leadership, not leaders. And yet I believe the world believes the opposite. We actually need more leaders. I just think we need more leadership. And I think that innate in each of us, and I truly believe each of us, I believe that we have both the qualities, the characteristics, and the capabilities to actually make huge differences, not only in our own lives, but in our sphere, our orbit around us. And leadership is really about how do you help first yourself, but then all those around you, which can be your family members, they can be your neighbors, they can be your community members, they can be your sphere of influence, they can be the people that you sit with at work, they can be total strangers, right, that you come into contact with. But leadership is about how do you help yourself first, just simply get into this state of perpetual progression, and then how do you help lift others into that state? And whether you're talking about a business or you're talking about some personal situation, it's all about advancement. There's going to be good times and bad times. There's going to be moments when you're crushing it and moments when you just suck, right? But through that all, if you keep this positive energy, this progression mode, man, the force around you it's palpable. And I believe that that's what's missing in the world is too many of us actually don't believe we have what it takes, or we have the right circumstances, or we have the right calling or title to actually make a difference. That's what I think needs to change. That's what I'm passionate about. That's why I wrote Leadership Orbit. That's what Leadership Orbit really is all about. And it works at the lowest levels of society to the very top. It's the same. And that's what so I just overcoming this leadership lie, I think, is one of the most important things that we all can be spending our time on.
I hope the audience heard this, because you said this same word 3 times and I was going to emphasize it and you said it the 3rd time. And I'm like, I'm going full circle on this no matter what now. The number one word that you come back to time and again is the power of belief. Henry Ford said it best. He said it a long time ago: whether we believe we can or we can't, we are right. Right. And it starts with a belief that we can transform, that we can make an impact, that we can create a life by our own design, that we can have the things that we want to have, and that you are worth it. And so many people don't. And not to overgeneralize, but it's probably 50% of the population, if not significantly more, that do not have those beliefs. And a lot of those beliefs all fundamentally are either a byproduct of the environment they grew up in. There's the inherent that have been passed down through generations. It's literally a legacy, for better or for worse. And we all have the opportunity to transform that paradigm. We have the opportunity to change those beliefs and create a new legacy for our families, for our organizations, for everything. So I love that you're talking about so much about the power of belief, because it has to start there. You can learn all of the stuff you want, but until you believe that you can create the change that you desire, it's never going to go anywhere. It's going to feel like you're beating your head against the wall. Absolutely brilliant.
And Zach, let me triple down on that.
Please.
I believe one of the main reasons why people have a hard time believing, and again, believing, fill in the blank after the word believing. It can go a lot of different ways. But one of the reasons why people have a hard time believing is because we have been erroneously programmed right now to expect instant gratification or instant success or instant impact. And I like to say this: we grossly overestimate what we can do in a day, and we drastically underestimate what we can do in a year. And it's that day, it's the day-to-day stuff that actually makes what we can accomplish in a year happen. It's just, we don't feel it, see it, touch it, taste it day to day. And because we don't, we simply lose our belief. And somehow we've got to reprogram our energy to understand that, no, these big things, these big transformations, these big changes, they actually start one step at a time. And one step, and the one step at a time doesn't actually result in some big, drastic, overwhelming response. It's almost unnoticeable to us, but that is no less powerful. And I think if we can somehow help people understand that, their belief system will go back up. And that's again, I think whether you're talking about a business transformation or a personal one, it starts with baby steps, done consistently well over long periods of time.
No, you're absolutely right. And you're right also in the respect that the hardest part is that tangibility. We want to know that the things that we are doing are actually contributing to the life, the health, the relationship, the business that we want to create. And it's funny, it might sound trite, but it's true. I was literally having this conversation with my daughter last night. She's 16 years old, coming up on 17. She started exercising and stuff again. And she's like, Dad, how long do you think it's going to be before I don't know what specific muscle group, whatever she was asking about, but she was asking about before I can start to see the results. And I said, honey, you're asking the wrong question. It's, number one, you're going to be the last person to see them because you're the one staring in the mirror every day. All of us will notice more quickly. But fundamentally, is any of that really important? What you have to fall in love with, babe, is fall in love with the process, because it doesn't stop. It's not like you hit that result and all of a sudden that body just sticks. If you don't continue to repeat the steps, the habits, the rituals that created the body that you wanted to begin with, then it's all going to be for naught. So I want you to start falling in love with the process. Why is this good for me? What does this do for my life? Yes, byproduct is you'll love what you see in the mirror. That's a sweet added bonus, but I want to feel good inside and out. I want to have the energy to do the things that I want to do when I want to do them. I want to experience life that much more. So I've been working with her on reframing those things. And what I find fascinating is, and I'm glad you brought this up because my little ones, so I have a 16, 8, and 5-year-old. And the 8 and the 5, like my son, it's weird because so he loves soccer. Okay. He plays soccer all day long. But when I try to get him to focus on practicing the fundamentals, I got him this AI tool with the soccer ball and it does the app and like takes him through drills and stuff. Yeah. He doesn't want to do it. He just wants to play. And on one hand, I'm celebrating that. And the other hand, at the same time, I'm trying to teach him that, buddy, like if you're going to become the best at this, if you really want to love soccer even more, level up your skill sets. And it's what you practice in private that you're rewarded for in public. So if you want to remain the best in the field, you got to keep doing the things that the other kids aren't doing. And you have to do it more often. You have to fall in love with these things that aren't the playing. But what'll happen is as you get better, you're going to love playing even more. But all of this to say, I find myself having these conversations with the kids where I don't know if it's a testing thing and they're hearing me, but they're just being kids right now and pushing back. But it's like I constantly talk about mindset and beliefs and the power of repetition and habits, and we're creating them regardless. And they seem to always push back on, I don't want to do that, or I don't need to do this. And I just keep hammering away with the hope that I'm filling their subconscious with enough usable information that at some point when it's appropriate for them, it's going to click. But I think this starts at a very, very young age. And unfortunately, most people aren't exposed to it soon enough.
It absolutely does. The soccer analogy is a good one. I have 4 kids. My third child has graduated from high school. So I have one left at home. So I'm almost like a different stage of life than you. But we talk about the process all the time, whether it's schoolwork or whether it's their athletics or their extracurricular activities. Soccer is a good analogy, right? We all like to play soccer and score goals or, be an amazing defenseman, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you know what? You can't depend on that for a long-term sustainable success. Why? Oh, you're going to be on the wrong team. Oh, the coach is going to be a bad coach. Oh, the referee was terrible and wasn't calling any penalties or called a dumb penalty at the end of the game and you lost. Oh, you tore your knee up and there's so many things that are that are going to happen. But if you can find this energy around this day-to-day working on the fundamentals, I'm working on my dribbling, I'm working on my hand-eye coordination, all those other things, those outcomes, those destinations that we like, that are enjoyable, a win, a winning goal, whatever, those are great, but they don't sustain us because the bad stuff's going to happen. And it's like that in school. It's like that growing up. It's like that in business.
And life.
That is life. And yet can we find ourselves just being energized and motivated by the day-to-day drills? Because we can actually control that. We can actually determine that. We can actually thrive with that. The outcomes will take care of themselves. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes fair, sometimes unfair. If you're a West Virginia basketball fan today, you think March Madness was very unfair, but you get what I'm saying. Like life is unfair.
Yeah.
The process building is so important.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I could talk about this subject matter for days. I love leadership. I love behavioral psychology, and I've always wanted to understand why do people do the things that they do. And initially, it was, superficially, I was saying I wanted to help my clients. My past life was in the health and wellness industry, and I was like, why are there 3 groups of people? The ones that make the decision and they transform their life and they stick to it. And there's the people that ping pong back and forth their whole life. It's like they gain and lose. They've all lost 100 pounds, 10 pounds 10 times over and over and over again. And then the people that are just like, screw this, I'm never going to start to begin with. My life is the way that it is. My parents were unhealthy. I'm never going to be healthy. Whatever. I wanted to understand that. And that was my superficial explanation. What I realized is I really wanted to understand myself, which to your point earlier, there's those levels of leadership. It's like we have to learn to lead ourselves first. And then the next step is being able to influence one-to-one, one other person, and then being able to influence a group of individuals. And then ultimately to where our leadership becomes transcendent. You've created a set of values, of principles, a way of living that now gets passed on to a multitude of people. So I love that you talk about leadership so holistically. I love that there is such a depth of understanding when it comes down to our beliefs as being the core driver in our ability to create anything that we desire. Now, I'm curious with MBL Partners, who do you guys work with the most? Is there an ideal client, somebody that you love and enjoy working with the most, or that your business is most commonly attracted to, like in terms of size of organization, the niche, industry, anything?
Yeah, we're sector agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, who you work with the most usually is mostly around kind of your own network and your own sphere of influence. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're working with a bunch of different companies of different sizes, from startup, the solopreneurs with an idea and a dream and a hope, all the way up to, big, large platforms, big medical, healthcare platforms that are actually scaling and growing across the country. So, size isn't where our sweet spot really is not determined by size or sector. It's really determined by an individual or an organization's desire, right, to progress. And we have a pretty broad network that we work with closely, and that's expanding.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm curious about something. Maybe this is more anecdotal in response, but have you found that I would have to imagine that if people are like, yes, I want to invest in leadership, that most companies, particularly the ones that need it the most, are the last ones that are going to go, I need to find a leadership coach. I need somebody to help me level up my team and organization. I recognize that I have these weaknesses, that I'm not showing up at my best. Is that becoming a more common, transparent, both awareness and conversation today? Or is it 9 times out of 10, you getting your foot in the door with some other aspect of the business development that you're working on, and then it evolves that direction as you're like, hey, as we're working together, I've noticed that there are some patterns in communication, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. The reality is, in a business sense, it's rare. It's not impossible, but it's rare for businesses to really, really thrive without some core leadership culture. And so what we found is, without it, you're exactly right. They're not knocking at the door, recognizing their leadership flaws or the lack thereof. What they are knocking on the door of is some cash flow management issue, some sales issue, some turnover issue, some compliance or regulatory nightmare issue. Like, there's usually some business focused issue. And at MBL Partners, we actually we have a belief and a thesis that there are some of these common business issues that many businesses deal with, of all sizes. And we have solutions for those. And that's usually how we ultimately get into the door. And ultimately, where it leads is a discussion around, hey, look, you've got a lot of individuals that have a lot of potential that is being bottled up and not utilized, and you need every ounce of their potential. You need them to be leaders. Again, you need the mailroom, you need your secretary, you need your office manager, you need your CEO, right? You need them to exhibit leadership to really help. But it usually starts with some common business problem like cash flow management or some other thing. And that's how we usually get in the door.
Yeah, excellent. I expected as such. I mean, not many people are going to be willing to tolerate their own ego step back and say, hey, I've got a problem, I need some help. And I think more often than not, we're unaware until we've gone through those challenges, and you look back and you're like, dang, I wish I could have been a part of this process sooner. So it's a beautiful gift that you're finding different opportunities to get in and serve the organization, and then you can expand that conversation into leadership. Like, I know myself in leadership, it was coming from the wrong place. I mean, the right place, but it was the wrong execution. Like, I had a desire to become a better leader, but for when one of your fundamental beliefs is that you have more industry knowledge, that you have to do all of the things, there's no way to ever get yourself outside that hole. And when you can transform your fundamental beliefs to the only way that this company is really going to grow and achieve the impact that I desire is to help every single person around me to level up, to help every single person around me step into their full potential. Where are they being underutilized? Where are their skill sets that I haven't even been aware of yet? When they can start operating at 80 to 100% of their potential versus I think the majority of people are probably at 50% and below. They're just stuck in the cubicle doing the thing that they're hired to do. We need more. We need fewer titles, less boundaries. You need them because you have to have lanes for people to stay in. And at the same time, we need to soften the paint on those lines and allow people to start moving into different roles and experiment with and explore what could make them even better and have an even greater impact. So I love that you're bringing all this in. When I'm curious as we wrap up the conversation, is there a a particular question that business owners should be asking themselves in order to start gaining awareness? Because I believe fundamentally all change starts with awareness. If you don't know you have a problem, you're never going to try and find a resolution. So is there a question that business owners can or should be asking themselves to gain a greater depth of awareness as to where their leadership is at present and how it may be negatively impacting them so that they can start having these conversations with you?
Yeah. So let me give you three different answers for that.
Perfect.
First, I believe that with business, every business kind of consideration and question should begin and end with cash.
Mm.
Do you know where the cash is coming from and do you know where the cash is going? Does your business have that type of transparency and visibility on cash flow? That's usually a foundational component of the vast majority of all businesses. There's a lot of doors to go through in answering that question, but that's kind of question one. Everything begins and ends with cash. Again, there are exceptions, but predominant.
Yeah.
Second thing is when you're really contemplating where your organization or where you stand in a business sense, really being truthful and honest about two different dynamics is, I think, a really helpful starting place. Number one, do your people at all levels feel empowered to do the job that you've asked them to do?
Mm.
Or are they controlled? Do they not feel empowered? If you get really naked and exposed in understanding how your people feel about answering that question, that's usually a really, really healthy, good starting point to start to uncover. Because when people don't feel empowered, leadership is literally drowned it out. Empowering people is like the beginning and the end of making sure you have a culture where leadership can really do what it wants to do and help you. So empowering. And again, it's always easy for someone to say, yeah, of course I've asked them to do it and I've empowered them. But do they feel empowered? Can they really make those decisions? Are you really getting in the way? That's a good starting place. The second thing is transparency. Is there a culture of full, unfettered, unblocked transparency? Because I believe that businesses, in order to thrive, have to progress. And I believe if you're not transparent about your everything, your weaknesses, your issues, your warts, whatever, if there's not a culture of transparency, it's really hard to progress if you don't know what you're trying to overcome, or if you're not staring at that truthfully. And so empowering, and is there a culture of empowerment, transparency, and then the third thing, which I stated first, is cash. And those would be my starting points.
That's beautiful and brilliant too. I actually love that you talk about cash because I think it's one of these conversations that a lot of coaches, consultants, leadership professionals, they either lean heavily into or more often than not avoid because there's this stigma around a company making money. But the reality is the majority of businesses are for-profit businesses. They're not non-for-profit. And if we aren't managing cash flows first, we may not have a business to manage at the end of the day. So it's very important to be mindful of that and then leaning into of the other aspects of, are we really empowering our people and being transparent. I like the idea of transparency too, because it's going to open more conversations internally, as well as creating more trust and safety with our external environment, with our clients and customers. So those are really beautiful pillars to be mindful of and lenses to be looking through as you are strategically guiding and working with any leaders in a company. So brilliant, brilliant, brilliant approaches and topics. I want to continue to explore this, but I'm going to bite my own tongue because I know I will be tangential and go off into the ether. So with that said, yeah, I just want to thank our audience for spending your time with us on the Perpetual Growth Podcast today. And a big shout out to Matthew Mathison for bringing so much value to today's conversation. Matthew, where can our listeners connect with you, learn more about your leadership program, investing with you? What are some of the resources that they may find or be able to access?
Yeah. So like I said, I wrote all about this subject in my new book, Leadership Orbit. People can find that leadershiporbit.com. You can sign up. There's blogs and newsletters and things like that. You can buy the book there. And it's also obviously on Amazon, on the other bookstores. I have my own personal website, MatthewMathison.com. And then of course, MBLPartners.com is my investment platform.
Excellent. MBL Partners, Matthew Mathison. That's Matthew with 2 T's. And then the book, oh my gosh, now my brain's going blank.
Leadership Orbit.
Leadership
Yep.
Orbit. Thank you. I'm like, okay, I got to add that to my reading list. Is that on Audible too, or hard copy now primarily?
Audible will be coming out this year, but yeah,
Cool.
soft copy and hard copy and digital. So
Excellent. Oh, beautiful. Fantastic. Well, if this episode sparked something for you, don't keep it to yourself. Be sure to share it, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review so we can help reach even more people on their growth journey. And remember, growth doesn't happen by chance. It happens by choice. We'll see y'all next time.